Well, now on 4, it's time for the Late Shift, and we welcome 2 new presenters, Doris Day and Perry Como.
Welcome to the Late Shift. I'm Doris Day.
I'm Perry Como. Well, tonight we have this really extremely wonderful film, Elvis 56, which personally turned me onto Elvis somewhat late in the day. Because, I mean, I always knew he was important and all that, but I never really saw what all the fuss was about till I saw this film, Elvis 56.
And this is only half of what we got for you, because the second film is about Les Paul, an inventor of all kinds of things, including which is a particular kind of electric guitar, which is played in the Elvis film by Scotty Moore, and how he plays it. So Elvis had made his great records, for me his great records, in 54 and 55, and moved to RCA Records in 56. But in this film we see him performing for a mass audience in America, all his great numbers of the day, with this little band of Scotty Moore on guitar, Bill Black on bass, and Elvis. And I didn't realise that, you know...
There was that much good stuff, you know.
And no wonder America went crazy when they saw this stuff.
Totally. What a
we kind of got it sort of...
voice, moves, footwork, nice footwork, knee bend.
So we got it second-hand. We got visits from just about everybody but Elvis. The great tragedy for English rock and roll fans was that Elvis never came to Britain. You believe that?
Brutal.
So here we get, late in the day, you know, the evidence of what an amazing original guy this was, mixing up gospel and country and blues, doing his favourite songs, many of them hits at the time. He just heard them and went in and did them. Shake, Rattle and Roll, I Got a Woman, all these things. He did, you know, they're like just instant reaction, reinterpreting them. Ooh, energy, pop, brilliant.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wasn't he one of the first white artists to do black musician stuff?
Certainly in a style anything like the way that black people did it.
And the interesting thing is then that, of course, the kind of the establishment, as it were, you know, the way they say white men, you know, supposedly frightened of supposed black men's superior potency, they treated Elvis just like that, and he was really castrated, you see, both by his manager and by the media and by various people. You know, they not only cut him off below the waist on TV, they also cut him off musically later on by not letting him work with his key people.
Well, Americans, the media, especially based in Los Angeles and New York, has always had a very suspicious thing about Southerners. It sort of sees them as a bit slow and, you know, they don't understand how they're going to behave. And Elvis was the epitome of a Southern boy.
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing for me that I got from this film, which I hadn't realised, is what a sweet boy he was. Like, you could see, obviously, very well brought up by his mother. Just the way he treats people, like that guy, High Gardner, who does a phone interview with him in the film. And it's so moving. You just see him there, and he's so bewildered. You know, he's getting all this flack, and he's just trying to do his music, and you can see all the conflict. When he says, I'm all mixed up, you know, you really feel for him.
And the manager, Colonel Tom Parker, I think decided soon after this that it wasn't necessarily good PR to allow people to see the real Elvis.
The vulnerable Elvis, so which really made him a man, as much as, you know, that's what makes him a man, not just him, you know, being able to...
The macho side, yeah.
Yes, not just the macho side, exactly.
So Parker took him out of circulation, landed him in Hollywood, and he spent the next, I don't know how many years, either in Hollywood or the American Army, but definitely not playing like we see him here.
And of course there's that fantastic moment in this film where you see him on the Steve Allen show, where they make him sing Hound Dog to a hound dog in a little top hat and tails. I mean, it's absolutely obscene, really.
Embarrassing.
And that was just the portent of things to come. And of course, it's great also, what really balances the whole film out, is when you actually see him do Hound Dog in the studio, and he insists, regardless of what the musicians say, he insists on doing 30 takes and finally selects number 28. But incidentally, that's another fascinating thing about the way this film is done, because I've never seen such brilliant rostrum camera work by Lucky Martucci off a bunch of stills that were taken for Time Life by Alfred Wertheimer. Because these are very eloquent stills, and, you know, they must have almost gone through the contact sheet and shot it in a really great camera moves. You actually get the impression, because that's all the Hound Dog in the studio is, it's not footage, it's just stills, but it's so beautifully put together, you feel as if you're there and watching it as footage.
So, if you thought you knew everything there was to know about Elvis and had seen everything there was to see, you're in for a surprise, because you haven't. And if you didn't think there was anything worth knowing or seeing about Elvis, you're definitely in surprise, because there is, and here it is.
Yes.
Totally brilliant. Elvis in 56. And you can get most of the tracks on that on this LP called Elvis the 56 Sessions, taken from 4 sessions recorded in New York and Nashville, going from I Got a Sweetie in January to Hound Dog in July.
Must have.
All featuring Scotty Moore and his marvellous Les Paul guitar, and there's more from Les Paul after the break.
And after the dizzying heights of early Elvis Presley, we're now going to see something about the man who helped make that sound possible, to wit Les Paul, inventor extraordinaire, who I didn't realise, I mean, I'd heard of Les Paul, who hasn't heard of Les Paul and the Gibson Les Paul, but I didn't realise that he seemed to have, did he really seem to have invented tracking, like 8-track, 16-track?
Yeah. Certainly he gives this impression in the
Is this a fact?
film. It could be. And having previously done it, as he describes, where he would record onto one record and then play that record and overdub something and get another record and all that.
Well, I suppose somebody had to do it, and Les Paul looks like the man for the job.
Yeah.
Charlie has a brilliant Les Paul story, which he'll tell you now.
It's the only one that I know about him that's not in the film itself, and we don't want to spoil all the film. But he was a real perfectionist, as you'll see. And when he'd finished making his records, for everybody who finished making a record in a studio, the trouble is that it sounds great in the studio, might even sound great at home, but how does it sound on the radio? That's what you want to know. Well, he set up a little transmitter in the studio so that when he finished making the record, he could put the record on his little radio station, run out, sit in the car, tune the car to his radio station and check it out. And the level of voice and guitar and or guitars, because he did multi-tracking, is very, very crucial to the way he recorded. And he could go back in again and do it again if it wasn't right.
What a genius. And not only that, the first studio that he built, I love the way he says you had to climb in through the window. It was so primitive. He was such a pioneer. In this film, he takes you through from building a crystal set on down. You know, it's deep.
So just so you know where he stands, the Gibson was one of the 3 main guitar manufacturers. The other one, which was equally big, was Fender. And the one that predated both of them was Rickenbacker. And those are the 3 magic names for every rock guitarist ever. And in the film, Mike Bloomfield talks about who played a Gibson. But one person he doesn't mention was Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry played a cherry red Gibson, I always remember that. And of course, Scotty Moore that we saw earlier. Still, let's tell you the story himself. Here he is.
That was a fascinating little trip down Pop's technical history alley, wasn't it?
And with all that wizardry that he does, what he likes doing best of all was playing music live on stage. Very surprising. Especially surprising considering it was hardly the exciting phenomenon that Elvis was.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, that's it for the Late Shift for this week. Next week.
Next week. What a great week we have next week.
We've got music from Zimbabwe and music from the front line.
And then we have Thelonious Monk, the mighty Thelonious, music in Monk time.
And finally, Betty Carter.
Shaboop-de-boop.
But then she's Betty Carter. So, see you then.